Miss Shelly. Welcome to
Morning,
the
Miss.
Counselors Happy Hour podcast. This is our fourth episode. Thank you for coming and joining us here.
My pleasure.
How are you, Miss Shelly?
Good. I never like to come to school on a Saturday morning, but yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we gotta do things that we don't
Yes.
really like.
But I'm really enjoying the CADS activity, teaching
Yeah.
English, so
Me
yeah,
too.
it makes it worthwhile.
Me too. Yeah, so Miss Shelly, today's episode we're talking about grieving. It's a challenging topic. I mean, for me, because it get me emotional if I talk about grieving. From your point of view, how do you perceive grieving?
Well, firstly, I think it's a healthy process. It's a natural reaction one would take to any loss. So I think sometimes if we think of grieving, we think maybe just a loss of a loved one. But it can be as simple as your friend transfers to another school, or you don't become the student president. These are losses that we should grieve. I think it's important to know that it's a natural process and it's a healing process. So if we stop in the process, that's actually detrimental to the restoration. So and of course we emotional beings, so it is going to affect us emotionally. That being said, we're all individuals, so we grieve in different ways. So it's not always, sometimes we perceive somebody that we think is not grieving, when actually because they're not crying doesn't mean they're not deeply moved, emotionally within. They're just processing differently.
So everyone process grieving differently.
Yeah, and therefore the time factor is so different. It can be over a few weeks, but it can be a few years. And 1 to 2 years is actually the natural a natural time frame for healing. If it's somebody very close to us, or it's unexpected, or it's a young person, or it was an accident or suicide, something that's even doubly traumatic.
So 1 to 2 years is actually
that's not going to complicated grief. The difference between a natural grieving process and complicated when it becomes harmful to the person is there's no change of characteristics. It doesn't have unique characteristics. It's the same, but it's more intense and it's over a much longer period. That's when it becomes harmful to the person, no longer healing and healthy.
Yeah. And you also mentioned about, even though we don't express like outwardly that we're grieving, like some people obviously will cry or scream during the earlier phase after the loss, but some people maybe they're internally grieving. How you differentiate? Because people might think if you're not like crying, you like repress your sadness, and it will be more harmful. But
I think the secret is, if you are mourning, don't allow anybody close to you that doesn't know you well. Because people can think they helping and they give you bad advice. Obviously, in different cultures and different religions, we have sort of expected norms or what's okay, how to grieve, and very different. But if we say, for example, to somebody who's crying a lot, okay, you've cried, now it's enough, time to stop. That is actually detrimental to their restoration. Obviously, if they're crying and weeping and depressed and it's already a year or so, then we have to try help them out of that, because now it's gone from healthy to unhealthy. But I think we forget that in the grieving process, it's not only grief and mourning, but anger is such a big part of it.
Yeah.
And when you stop somebody being angry, it's like sometimes people get angry at God. I always say to them, God's much bigger than your anger. He can handle it. Get angry, speak to him, because as you vent and release it, it's healing for you. So I think the secret is, don't hold things in, don't repress, and those around you. You know, sometimes we think, what are we going to say? How do I comfort somebody? Actually, our presence, just sitting with them, just being with them, is the most beneficial to them. Because if you can understand, if you have mourned and gone through deep grief, you realize that it's like there's an emptiness. You can't process your mental thinking, your emotions, just making decisions, or just preparing yourself coffee. Thank goodness now we've got food on order. But all of those things we tend to forget. So if we suppress different things, the person then doesn't feel safe to share. So one is your presence to help somebody grieve. Also, the other is to allow them to grieve and reminisce. A friend of mine just lost her brother last week. And I mean, firstly, she just wept and wept and wept. But then the second was, she told us so many stories about him. And I think we honored her by allowing her to speak about him for 2 hours, just because she could, in that way, she was processing. So there's so many different aspects of the process. But I think to help somebody also to be there is not quiet them down, not thinking of things to say, not giving them good advice, because that is not helpful.
I remember when I lost my dad, and then some people just tell, oh yeah, he's in a better place, or it will be okay, or start giving me like Bible verses. Of course, they're just trying to encourage, but
wasn't encouraging at the time, right?
Maybe not the right time.
Yes, timing is very important. And I think some people think, okay, so I've grieved, now I've been angry, now I'm denying, so I'm depressed, so I should be accepting. Those are the known stages of grief. However, C.S. Lewis, when he was grieving his wife, said it's like waves. And also, if you're close to somebody that's grieving, you'll see maybe they crying, and then they're angry, and then they're in denial, and then they're accepting, and they go back again. So it's not clinical, linear. It's not sterile. It's just, but it's allowing all of those emotions to be released in a safe place with somebody you trust. God says in the Bible that we should rejoice with those that rejoice and weep with those that weep. So if somebody's in mourning, we need to be quiet. We're not supposed to try and make them happy. We should be there with them through the process and cry with them, weep with them, and then when that time is right, allow them to talk freely and share.
And just listen to them.
And it's only when they get to the acceptance stage where you can actually start thinking of, okay, so how's your life changed, and what does this mean? Particularly if it's a husband or wife, you have to change names at the bank, you have to do all sorts of things, legal documents that there's just no ways you can even process that, in the first few months. So I remember my father didn't die, but when he had a stroke, he was only 58. I'm 60 now. So he was 58. The surgeon said he would never walk or talk again. And they said to us, to our face, he'll be a vegetable, when we asked to take him home. I mean, you're mourning, and a specialist says that to you, and he's so young. But we grieved and mourned as well, but then also had hope that he would recover, So it's not simple.
It's complex.
But process. I think the most important is to allow the process, because it's healing, to run its course. In a safe place.
So you were describing about the stages of grief, the popular theory about stages of grieving. So it's from Kubler and Ross about the 5 stages of grieving: denial, and then anger, bargaining, depression, and finally accepting. But this is I mean, I used to think that this is like a stage, like process, linear process. But actually, like what you said, it's not a linear process. It can be a cycle. And what I experience is, yeah, it could be a cycle, and sometimes you got back to anger, sometimes you accept it, sometimes, yeah, you try to, bargain to God or to people around you. So yeah,
I think with that also, just that because we're unique, how we coped with stress before that grieving process will stand us in good stead as to how we deal with the loss.
How we cope with stress before the loss.
So if we've got those techniques in how we deal with stress, how we process it, are we comfortable with being uncomfortable with ourselves? You know what I mean? Sometimes we disappoint ourselves. Sometimes it's hard to forgive ourselves for something. But if we can process that and get to a place of well-being once again and handle stress. Like I'm from South Africa, so we have some of the top surfers in the world and top surfing sites just 20 minutes from our house. And I always see it as surfing. Utilize the circumstances to overcome and turn it into something that it's a learning experience. It refines your character, it matures you, rather than, I remember when my father had the stroke, we just had phone calls from all over South Africa, and much loved man, and people say, how are you coping?
Yeah.
Are you hanging in there? And my mother said, my mother's a doctor, but she just said, we're not hanging, because that implies we're underneath the stress, underneath the trauma. We are learning to be trapeze artists. We're learning to walk on top.
Yeah.
And so if we don't allow stress and traumas and grief to overwhelm us, but work with the process, we're going to get the best out of it.
Okay.
So but those mechanisms that we had before are going to stand us in good stead. If I can just add, the concern is when somebody's always strong and they feel they have to be strong in the grief process.
Toxic positivity.
Yeah, so sometimes like hyperactive, keep busy and I'm fine.
Yeah.
Actually what they're doing is delaying a healthy healing process. And it's going to hit them later. It doesn't go away. So it might be on the anniversary or at Christmas, any family celebration, that all of a sudden they start the process.
Yeah.
But it's actually, if it's delayed too long, it then becomes complicated, it becomes unhealthy, and also you're gonna face it. So I always say, like, encourage the natural process so that the healing can come quicker than.
Yeah. How can we tell if we, trying so hard to be strong or positive?
Again, I think it comes down to having people that know you around you. And unfortunately, there are people that don't have supportive people around. And then you hopefully have somebody who's loving and a counselor around, or just somebody that knows them well enough to say, this is not you anymore. This has gone beyond healthy, healing, feeling depressed, but we're still moving on. Now you're just stagnating. Now you've shut off everybody. Now you're antisocial. You've cut off your friends. All your support mechanisms you've cut off. This is not a healthy place. And then you start with one, and and you help them out of it. But the time again, of course, we're unique, but 1 to 2 years is healthy. After that, maybe for a spouse, it's maybe been like my parents been married for 60 years, right? Or more. Yeah. So often in those 2 years after that, many pass away of a broken heart within weeks, months, because it's just too much of a loss for them. So that's a problem. It's not just physically affecting us, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally. So because of the grief, our immune system goes down. So we're susceptible to other conditions.
Right.
And and that's where somebody close to you has to watch out for you, that you're eating, that you're sleeping.
Yeah.
I mean, some people then go the route of just hit them with medication. But as you know, anxiety, depression, medication is very different. And
Right.
one can be very addictive, so you just develop another problem. But initially, if they're not sleeping over a period of time, it's good just to have like a sleeping tablet or something, because, you know, 3 days without sleep and dreaming, you can have a psychotic break. Just 3. So it needs to be monitored holistically, you know, emotionally, physically.
Yeah. How about for someone who, you know, get through the loss with minimal support system? I mean, not that many people or family members that can watch them or monitor.
Look, a lot of people don't. A lot of people, and for that, the most people on their own go through grieving and come out in a good place. But of course, they will feel more loved and supported if they have that support around them.
Yeah.
But those that don't have good coping mechanisms to begin with, or are over anxious, or prone to be depressed, or isolate, they're the danger ones. Those are the ones we have to pick up, and they need that support. So if we have any friends that, you know, are grieving, mourning, like we have now, you know, with our students, particularly in grade 12, give them a place where they feel safe. They can just, you can just be together without having to say anything, speak about anything. But then if they want to share and reminisce and talk about the good times, that's good. Can you imagine a mother? We always say that parents should never outlive their children. And so it's very traumatic for any parent to lose a child. They never recover, actually. They never fully recover.
Never fully
Never.
recover.
I had a cousin who passed away on her 19th birthday. She rolled a car. And my aunt never fully recovered. She was the only daughter. And her son was with me in England at the time. I had to put him on a plane and send him home to South Africa. She wouldn't let him out the country for a couple of years because she was petrified she would lose another child. But until she died like 2 years ago, she never recovered from her daughter's loss fully.
Yeah.
You know, so it's...
Yeah, last time when I was like in my intense grieving time, someone sent me a picture that the grief will always be there. It's just us who grow with it and live with it. So it's, the grief is still there. It's not gonna fully gone.
Because I think I shared a little bit with you, with almost 20 years up in young girls out of prostitution, and with those addicted to drugs, alcohol. I've had many losses. Some overdosing, you know, they were clean but then went back and took their natural dosage, which was far too high. Overdose, to see somebody foaming at the mouth and just out of control, it's heartbreaking. Many of my girls died from HIV/AIDS, or sorry, I call them my girls, ladies young and old, but or complications. In India, many of them died from TB of the spine or the brain. I'd never heard of it before. South Africa is very common for TB of the lungs. It does. I've learned to embrace it. I'm not fearful of it, but then some people say I'm strong. But how do we get stronger unless we face trauma and work through it? So I'm not fearful of it, and I know it's there. And like now, I'm a little emotional if I can see their faces, I can hear them laugh, I can hear them calling out for me.
I found out that when in grieving, sometimes we tend to withdraw socially because we're not on the mood, maybe we're depressed, and just accepting the help offer from someone, even if you don't like it, because that's what I experience. I don't feel like meeting people, but this friend keep asking me, let's meet up, but then I just said yes. It turned out I need it. I need that kind of, because sometimes we try to close ourselves and not accepting people's offer to help us.
I think it's the time. So there's a time. It just takes too much energy to answer people's questions, and people sympathetic around you, they all often ask the same questions, and it's just too tiring to answer the same questions. So there's that healthy bit of just needing your space, just to let it all out, you know what I mean? But then again, needs to just have that one friend or something that say, okay, now it's time. Just a little bit, just have a little exposure, even if it's going somewhere, and slowly start those steps of reconnecting, new relationships. Sometimes you lose friends through grief because they don't know how to grieve with you. Or sometimes when a couple loses a child, it actually, their grieving is different, and the anger they can't deal with, and maybe blame each other, and a marriage falls apart. But sometimes it brings them together, right? So it's just that when to get them to be a little bit brave to take the step.
Right. One more thing before we get to the end of this talk. Guilt. That's for me, that's a huge intense emotion that I experienced during my grieving. And I also heard from my students from the current grade 12 loss, the guilty feelings. How do we process?
I'm sure you won't mind. My young brother struggled with drugs for many, many years. And a friend of his died of an overdose last week. And he was absolutely devastated. And he was overwhelmed by guilt because he was the one that introduced drugs to this guy. And I said to him, and people were saying to him, you can't blame yourself. I said to him, that's the wrong approach. I said, own it.
Oh, wow.
Own it. Say, yes, I messed up. And then ask God for forgiveness, and then forgive yourself. Otherwise, those platitudes don't work.
Yeah.
He had a part in it. So say, I'm guilty. Guilty as charged. God, please forgive me. Forgive yourself. Make adjustments that you're never going to do that again. You know what I mean? That's how we mature. That's how we grow up. If we just self-pity and go into depression and I'm thinking of this, it's not honoring that person's memory, and you're not helping, you're not growing. So that's unhealthy response.
Yeah. Because sometimes we just want to make the friend feel better. Oh, it's not your fault.
But actually, it is,
I mean, that's a new thing for me. Own it. Yeah, the more you get used to feel those uncomfortable emotions, the more that you're actually on the right path for healing.
And then you can self discipline, self control. You take steps that, if you've messed up, you can ask people to. You can say sorry. You can ask people to forgive you. That's how you heal relations, right?
Yes, but the difficult part is to forgive ourselves sometimes. Even if the friend already said yes, it's okay, I forgive you, but sometimes.
Again, if I can use my brother, I trust he won't mind. But he's really struggled with guilt and all the stuff he's done and messed up with. And he struggles to receive forgiveness from God. I said, your problem actually is you not forgiving yourself. They said, yeah, that's right, I just can't do it. I said, if you think about if God is there and God says, if you ask me to forgive you, I will. If you say you can't forgive yourself, where are you putting yourself? You're putting yourself above God. That's the wrong position. So we should say, if God forgives me, yes, if I repent, right? If God forgives me, who am I not to forgive myself? So I gave him an exercise. Every day out loud, you say his name to himself. I forgive you. So I would say, Shelly, I forgive you. God has forgiven me. Shelly, I forgive you.
Okay.
Out loud. and it's a process, and it's helping. He's been recovering and actually stepping out and asking forgiveness of those that he's harbored unforgiveness to for many, many years. That's hindered his healing. Just by saying, I forgive you.
So, Pauline, I forgive you.
Yeah. And for some people, they can't even say it out loud. Impossible. I say, I cannot. I say, try.
Yeah.
So it's an act of your will first, and the emotions follow. So if we wait until we want to do something, or we feel in the right emotion to do something, we can wait forever. But if we understand, it's, as Christian, we know it's a command of God, but I'm sure in all faiths that if we do not forgive others, then we're not forgiven. So if we wait for the emotions, not going to happen. Make it with your will. I choose to forgive.
Decision.
And then the emotions come. So many of my girls have been raped multiple times, gang raped, beaten up, being cut open, beaten up, held gun in their face. And then to forgive, it's a big task. I say, you're never going to want to do that. But if you choose to and speak it out, that's when your healing comes. Why should that person have power over you?
Right.
Right. You're trying to go forward and you've got a bag on your back, you take three forward, 5 back. But if you cut them off, you forgive them, they're gone. You're free to move forward. So. But of course you have to be brave. But it's one step at a time, and you get stronger. When you are stronger, you can face more battles. So that's where the victories come.
Right.
Baby steps.
Baby steps.
Baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps.
One step at a time.
One step at a time. Okay, wow. I enjoy this conversation with you this morning, Miss Shelly, because especially own it and process every feelings, even though people might think it's like negative feelings, anger, guilt, sadness, but it's okay. And 1 to 2 years are the normal.
It's not
phase.
not unhealthy by then.
It's not unhealthy. And also when if we have someone, our friend who's going through a grieving process, our presence there is already enough. Our presence, and that's the right and proper support we can give. And in the right time we can start giving.
And don't be surprised with the different changes.
Don't be surprised.
in the I've dealt with anger and it comes back. No, just deal with it again.
Okay. All right.
And have a safe place for anger, right? Always say, if you don't have a punching bag to hit or a pillow you can hit, go to a field, throw plates, shout, scream, like just it's amazing. It just releases all that anger and negativity. And exercise, of course. So exercise is fantastic for that. So if you put them into place, don't hold it in. The secret is find a safe place to vent, and then it's no longer toxic inside. It's the same with the grieving process, that you can. As long as it's not harming others and not harming yourself.
Do
it in a safe place.
Okay.
I see in America, I think they've got these places where they throw axes or something.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen it?
Not yet.
But you can go, or you can go to a place and smash things. Like we should have those. You know that game that you have in the arcade with all the little.
Oh, like whack-a-mole or something.
Yeah, the molds come up and you hit their heads. Anything like that can amazingly release any negative emotions.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
In Greece, that's why they throw plates, right?
Okay. Well. Yeah. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Pleasure, Miss. It was lovely to do it.
Yeah. I feel like I could talk about this for a long duration, but we can talk about it in our private conversation.
Yes, we can, or we can have a follow up if needed.
Follow up. Okay, so thank you so much, Michelle, for your time.
Thank you for allowing me to share a bit of, because I see the young people struggling, and it's important to know it's okay not to be okay.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thank you everyone for watching. See you in our next episode. Bye bye.